know about the Renaissance?
And the most important banking family of that time?
The Renaissance started by the 14th to 17th century, between Middle and Modern Ages. It started in northern Italy, like Florence, Siena, Milan, and Rome, and expanded to the rest of Europe.
Renaissance was a rebirth of Greek and Roman ideas. People focused on arts, poetry, and science, studying the human anatomy.
People started to have interest in men. It was called humanism, and not only religion. Humanism was considered a heresy for the religious people.
There was a lot of making money as a consequence of the trade with Asia that introduced products like silks, spices, perfumes, and pottery. It was a period of prosperity from the international trade and an explosion of arts.
A new social class grew, the merchants, and they started to patronize artists and architects working in palaces. The Black Death reached Europe because of the fleets in the rats that came in the boats. This had a devastating effect on the population of the rural areas.
Also, the invention of the printing press was important because they could spread ideas better and faster.
But first, why did the Renaissance develop in Italy?
It developed in Italy because of its location. It was in the middle of Eastern and Western Europe, so it's easy to spread new ideas. Also, Italy has access to the Mediterranean and Adriatic Seas, having access to the Ottoman Empire. As a consequence of the Crusades, Italy became powerful and wealthier.
Another reason was the economy, because a new social class emerged, the merchants. Feudalism never flourished in Italy. Italy was more urban and was a commercial country. These merchants started to spend money on arts and architecture. Finally, Italy had a different political system. It didn't have a centralized government because it had independent city-states.
What kind of arts were commissioned by the church and what techniques did they use?
The church commissioned statues and paintings for their interior in cathedrals, also for the tombs. The artists used classical techniques of ancient Greek and Rome, representing the human body and inventing the perspective 3D, frescoes, and sfumatos. And what about the social structure?
Italy was divided into city-states. The top of the society was the nobility. They were dukes or princes. They were called grandees and they controlled the government. Then we have the merchants and the artisans. They were called the popolo grasso. They lived in luxurious palaces and they became patrons to artists who made portraits.
I remember something about the social structure. The skilled workers were in the middle range of classes. They lived in small houses and had to work a lot. For example, butchers, shoemakers, banners, etc. Then we have the unskilled workers that lived in the poor part of the city. They made unhealthy jobs and the children worked at a young age. They were called the popolo minuto.
Finally, at the bottom we have the peasants that live in the countryside. They produce food for the people and all the members of the family worked in very poor conditions.
In addition, poorer women began to work in house and country at an early age. The upper-class women were expected to run a house and they rarely went to school. Marriage was a wealthy alliance and were arranged with similar class families. Women couldn't vote or inherit property.
Peasants and workers' children were rarely educated because they were illiterate. The rich boys were educated by the church and then by grammar schools. The nobility children were educated by the tutors.
How did Florence form?
It became a republic in 1115. It was the center of international business and created the first banking system and gold coin called florin.
Merchants traded wool, jewelry, and metal work, and they imported goods from Asia, like pottery, silk, and pearls. all the people wanted to move to Florence.
The Medicis ruled Florence. They became wealthy for commerce, baking, and wool. They were rich people who became powerful. The first Medici was Giovanni, who created the first bank. Then we have Cosimo, who started the first dynasty. And then we have Lorenzo the Magnificent, that patronized many artists.
They opened art schools, and the family also supported science, music, and architecture. Galileo Galilei was the tutor of the Medici children. Family also had 4 popes in their dynasty to control power, and some of the Medici women became Queen of France.
The Duomo of the Cathedral of Florence, also called the Basilica di Santa Maria di Fiore, couldn't be finished, so Brunelleschi went to Rome to study the ruins and the architecture so he could finish it. It was the most important building in the world.
Brunelleschi's first architectural commission was an orphan hospital that revived the Roman style.
We know more about Renaissance.